Dear colleagues, we're starting our Dissertation Council session dedicated to the defense of Anna Ignatova on the topic political and conceptual foundation of the transformation of public administration in modern Russia. And this is seeking a degree of political sciences in the specialism 23002, political institutions, processes and technologies. According to the Act of St. Petersburg University, dated 19th December 2019, this Dissertation Council was set up, and I, Leonid Smorganov, professor of St. Petersburg University, Doctor of Philosophical Sciences, has been appointed chairman of this Dissertation Council. First of all, and then I would like to mention the names of all the members. Danilov Alexander Nikolaevich is on Skype with us, and he is a Doctor of Sociology, professor, associate member of the National Academy of Sciences of Belarus, the Republic of Belarus, working for the department for the State University of Belarus. Then also members of the Dissertation Council are Anna Volkova, Doctor of Political Sciences, Department of Political Administration, St. Petersburg University, Vadim Pashkus, Doctor of Economics, Professor of the Department of Economic Theory and Economic Policy, St. Petersburg University, Ivan Radikov, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of the Department of Russian Politics, St. Petersburg University, and Baranov Nikolai. Nikolai Baranov, Solovyov Alexander Ivanovich is absent. He is a professor from Moscow, but he has presented his review. So, according to federal law on science and state policy and science technology, St. Petersburg University was granted the right to issue academic degrees, doctoral degrees, PhDs and postdocs. According to this this law, an act of St. Petersburg University was issued on the 1st of September 2016. According to this act, we have the quorum is set for 5 people, and we have 6 members. So we have the quorum, and including the colleague who's on Skype. Well, there's an agenda for this session, and we're going to follow it. I'm going to now communicate to us what paperwork has been received from Anna, and then there will be a short presentation from Anna for up to 15 minutes. After the presentation, members of the Dissertation Council and members of the audience can ask questions. But if members of the audience want to make a comment or ask a question, please sign up for this opportunity and the registry, which you can see on the desk in front of us. Depending on the desire of the candidate, Anna can answer critique of every after every review or listen to everyone's comments and then reviews and then answer all of them. Then there will be a floor discussion, and anyone can, after the discussion of the floor, and after all the answers of the all the candidates' answers, then there will be a review of the academic advisor, and there will be a 5 minutes break between of the broadcast and the session. Everybody else except the members of the district leave the room, and there will be deliberation on the voting, and then the members of the audience are invited in, and then open voting procedure will take place on the resolution to grant a SOT degree, and please let's start with the reviews. Don't read out the whole review, because they're uploaded on the website onto the website of the university, and therefore just maybe focus on your critical remarks. I would like to say that there's live broadcast of this session on the website, and there's simultaneous interpretation from Russian to English and from English into Russian. Please switch off your mobile phones and for them not to interfere with our work, and now we'll start our agenda. Item 1. The paperwork that has been submitted by the candidate. Anna presented the following documents. There's an application from the defendant addressed to the rector of the university, Professor Kropotov, with a request to accept the dissertation for the defense, and it's dated on the 24th of October in 2019, and there's a review of Kulakova Tatiana Alexander, the academic advisor, then a list of publications comprising 10 titles, including 3 in the journals that are on the list of the approved by the Ministry of Education of the Russian Federation. There's a certificate about the passing of the candidate examinations, including political institutions, process and technologies, excellent, English excellent, and the history and philosophy of science good. There's also a degree certificate dated 20th of June 2000 that states that Anna received a qualification of politologist and political sciences, and a teacher in the specialty of politology, dated 10 June 2000, and there's also other documents like person marriage certificate because change of name, and then the distinction in soft and hard copy. Well, I would like to present my dissertation, the dissertation for the degree of a candidate of political sciences of St. Petersburg University on the topic political and conceptual foundations of the transformation of public administration in modern Russia. The Russian state is aggressively transforming the public administration system. Dynamic changes are aimed at increasing the efficiency and responsibility of the administrative apparatus. Attempts at administrative reform were undertaken in the 1990s. Administrative reform 2003 and 2004, 2006 and 2010 in Russia was aimed at increasing the efficiency of government bodies by improving their functions. The first stage, reducing duplicate and redundant functions in the government bodies, as well as creating a three-tier governance structure and improving the quality of government-provided services. That's the second stage. And e-government standardization, multifunctional processing centers were completed in this period. However, studies of the administrative reforms are often characterized by descriptive and evaluative approaches without revealing their conceptual foundations and in correlation with the transformation process and the political system. In these conditions, the identification of the ratio of conceptual, political, constitutional, and structural components and reform factors seem relevant. The development of transformation of information technologies programs 2000, Electronic Russia, 2010, Electronic State, 2017, Digital Economy became an additional factor, condition for the transformation of public administration and gradual transition from a hierarchical system of public administration to a horizontal network partner structure. New forms of openness, transparency, accountability, and of the state to society contribute to the overcoming of all the alienation of the state and citizens, the development of forms of cooperation and co-management, which are implemented in Russia. All this requires additional research efforts to better understand the vectors of transformation and political administration system in Russia. Degrees of development, the issues of transforming the public administration from methodological positions were studied in the basic works of Max Weber, Woodrow Wilson, David Easton, Frederick Taylor, Herbert Hyman, Gabriel Almond, Robert Dahl, Karl Deutsch, and others. Modern administrative reforms around the world were based on the work of Nick Manning, Neil Parson, Dallas North, Manuel Castells, World Bank analysts. Degree of development. I drew my analysis on the in the field of interaction of society and the state, on the national research of Ageyeva, Solovyova, Gaman, Galutvina, Bartsitsa, Gutrova, Pavlovsky, Pavlovsk, and the works devoted to the formation of an open government, electronic government, and the features of digital governance belong to Gastels, Blat, Chiganov, Volodenkova, Akunina, Smorganov, Druzhnikov, Volkova, and others. And the purpose of the study is of the correlation of conceptual, institutional, political, and structural factors in the transformation of public administration system in Russia, is coupled with the specifics of the context of the introduction of digital technologies. The research objectives include determining the direction of the transformation of public administration as a result of research into the correlation of political, institutional, structural, and conceptual foundations in it, and identifying the political and institutional, structural, organization foundations of the Russian administrative reform of 2003 and 2004, one reform, and 2006 and 2010, the second reform. Revealing the dynamics of theoretical and methodological provisions of administrative reforms in post-Soviet Russia, and determining the impact of the formation of function of the political system of modern Russia on the configuration, methods, and depth of completion of administrative reforms, exploring the main trends of management paradigm during the transformation of public administration in modern Russia, and identifying contradictions in the conceptual, political, institutional, and organizational foundations of administrative reform, studying the influence of structural and functional transformations of the administrative system on the formation of the service state as a stage of evolution of the public administration system in Russia, disclosing the content of the basic concepts of digitalization of public administration and digital society in modern Russia, a single window approach, status of platform, proactive budgeting, and exploring the main practices of civic participation in the public administration of modern Russia to clarify its possible transformation. And of course, the object of study includes the process of transformation of public administration in modern Russia and the conceptual, constitutional, and structural components. Subject of study is the correlation of theoretical concepts, institutions, and structures of public administration. The relevance of the dissertation research is reflected in the following. The conceptual apparatus for analyzing the transformation of public administration system has been clarified. Political, institutional, structural, and conceptual approaches to the implementation of administrative reforms of 2003, 2004, and 2006 and 2007 were identified in Russia. The dynamics of the correlation of conceptual, political, constitutional, and structural foundation and the transformation of the public administration system in Russia has been analyzed. Contradictions in the correlation of conceptual, political, institutional, and structural foundations of the administrative reform have been revealed as a source of change in the Russian management paradigm or governance paradigm. The influence of trends in centralization of power in the political system of modern Russia on the course and completeness of administrative reforms has been determined. And of course, also there's I can say that the provisions that are defended in the dissertation is that for the success of the ongoing transformational change in the public administration, it is necessary to use a systematic approach, as well as adapt the theoretical principles of management science to the national goals, objectives, and needs of Russian society and the state. The contradictions in the correlation of conceptual, political, institutional, and structural foundations on the concept of administrative reform, which were the source of the transformation of the managerial paradigm of modern Russia, have been revealed. The prevalence of political factors, political regime in Russia on the nature and the effectiveness, methods, efficiency, degree of completion and of administrative reforms has been confirmed. In improving the public administration system, coherence and conceptual justification of the upcoming institutional and structural changes aimed at increasing management flexibility by integrating the resources of professional and expert groups, civic associations, and citizens is absolutely necessary. A condition for the sustainability of changes in the public administration system is the interaction of citizens, political actors, civil servants, and civil society institutions in public administration, which builds confidence in administrative transformations and increases their effectiveness. The result of the structural and functional transformation of the administrative system in Russia is the creation of a service state. The development and improvement of the service state opens the way to the creation of e-government and digital government. The digitalization of public administration and the development of digital society in Russia determines the direction and transformation of the public administration system of modern Russia. The participation of citizens in the public administration requires training of citizens and civil activists in interacting with public authorities, which further leads to the formation of a new architecture of public administration, which is based on cooperation and co-management, civil budgeting, provision of public services. Theoretical significance. The theoretical significance of the thesis lies in the formation of an original concept of the dynamics of the correlation of conceptual, political, institutional, and organizational foundations of the transformation of public administration in modern Russia. The practical significance is based on the following: that the research materials can be used in further studies of the transformation of public administration, as well as the higher education system in the development of training courses and creation of The results of the dissertation have been tested. The validity of the conclusions is determined by the participation of the dissertation author in the implementation of the scientific grant of the Russian State Humanitarian Foundation, state ability, public administration, efficiency assessment systems, international experience, and modern administrative reform in Russia. Which focuses on the administrative reform documents used in empirical data. The author's publications have hash index of 4 according to Russian Science Citation Index. Well, thank you for your attention. Anna Mikhailovna, could you answer this question? What determines the quality of public governance, the digitalization or political regime? I think that first of all, of course, the ideological factors that have an impact. First of all, political decisions of the top governance, well, and according the civil servants will act in accordance with political decisions, and of course technological factors are at play here as well, and without training of the administrative personnel and citizens, because there's among the members of the public, the literacy, technological literacy, especially of the older generations, is quite at a low level, and so therefore we have to educate people and civil servants and build bridges between the civil servants and the population. And of course, civil society. So you think that the digitalization doesn't level off idealization? I think they act hand in hand because decisions, political decisions, play a predominant part here. Because if there's no political will to move in a certain direction, to build the interaction, well, then there will be no technological changes at all, and no changes in the mentality of the civil servants. Well, Ivan Vladimirovich, please. Technical question. What for provisions that you mention in the work, for example, the first one is the object of study, are key, which those that are in the introduction, in the conclusion, or what you voiced here in the, because the provisions that you show in your presentation and in the dissertation are different. Well, do you treat them lightly and focus on the content, not on the language? Well, I don't treat them in a formal matter. For me, the depth and the content are more important, but maybe the formulations are a bit different in the what you see in the introduction and conclusion and in my presentation. Maybe because at the beginning I had a more simplified understanding of my dissertation subject matter, but along the way I wanted to get it. So I just want to draw your attention that in one place is the drawing your attention to it, and the second one is the analysis. Well, have the administrative reforms been effective, successful? What process technologies and technologies have been more effective that need to be developed even further? I would like to say that administrative reforms have the history of it dates back to the 1990s. The goals that of the 90s or the 2003 and 4, 2006, the results, half of the results have been achieved compared to what goals had been set. Well, the most successful includes some technological advances, the creation of multifunctional service centers, well, the single window approach for the population to receive all the services public that has to do with government. I think that so in this connection, one small question. In every process that takes place, the absolutization of digitalization or other things that are treated as panacea, and they have a shadow side to them. So, do you see any drawbacks or negative sides of this process that could lead to the bureaucratization of service provision? I think maybe I did touch it upon it on the negative moments. The utilization between the state and citizens, or commercial entities, banks, any actors. Well, this brings accessibility, but this data with accessibility brings accessibility for criminals of the data, and well, the scams and can be possible, and therefore citizens and organizations may not get so actively involved in this process because they're afraid that their personal data could be used for criminal purposes. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Anna Vladimirovna, Anna Mikhailovna, could, based on your presentation in the text of your work, when you talk about the process of administrativeness, you draw on the concept of the administrative reform, other regulations, other laws, but you also cite the State of the Union addresses of the of different years of the president. So, what's your treatment of these addresses? What is the thank you very much. What is the status of the addresses of the president? Are not mere statements, public statements, or that he probably can make in talking to people in the street, but they reveal the ideology, and the head of the state outlines the directions of movements, and they are understood as guidelines of including the ideology of the administrative reform. Yes, I think so. That these ideas are then fleshed out in documents, legal documents. Then now we are going to turn to our next item on the agenda. Would you like to answer the critique and questions after all the reviews, or after all reviews are heard? Okay, thank you. All right, now we are going to start hearing the reviews of members of the Dissertation Council. I have, please, Danilov Alexander Nikolaevich, Associate Professor, Associate Member of the Academy of Sciences of Belarus. Thank you very much, Professor. I like the dissertation and the scope of the work. I would like to point out a few points here. Relevance is not maybe 100% pinpointed. The key issue in Russia is the search for an effective system of governance. If we build something effective here, then reforms. If the pyramid is inverted so that it serves the needs of the public, then the state will function better. I think that, and it's been touched upon in the dissertation. For me, is the practice-oriented nature of the work. I like it very much. When St. Petersburg research works or Russian works, they are very descriptive, tend to be very descriptive and less concrete. And if an author analyzes some material and then provides provisions for defense, then we should get not abstract conclusions, but concrete results. And therefore, here we see that concrete stuff, and that was reflected in a previous speaker's remark of the formulation, about the formulations. The work should have a better logic. The third point is the participation of the author in practical experience, practical work in projects that have to do with the foundation of basic research and the publications in significant journals. That means that the author is a true scientist, and he is in science for a long, here and now and for long. Now we can see erudition and practical and theoretical contribution to science, and the number of publications is adequate. All our reviews are accessible on the website. Therefore, I will not go further into commending parts. I will just concentrate on my criticisms. First of all, well, the relevance is not justified. So the demand for change from society is outside the context. The number of objectives is too long. Some of these objectives are too vague. 8 to 10 tasks are too many for a candidate of science dissertation. Well, you have to limit yourself to 3 or 4 that reveal the topic. So again, the main goal is too wide, and that doesn't allow the author to clarify her position. My colleagues may disagree with me, but every person that advocates something should be able to say in a couple of words that what they got or didn't get the degree for. So unfortunately, this research is of a descriptive character. The provisions for defense are diluted, and but in principle, I enjoyed reading the research work, the thesis, and one more thing. Contemporary trends should focus on negative side effects of reforms. Maybe some administrative reforms may turn into a futile endeavor or a malevolent endeavor. So you should have touched upon this in more detail. Well, digitalization is a nice word, and task or targeted budgeting or the service state are all nice terms, but whether they're entirely positive developments, we don't know. Well, but I should say that the dissertation is in conformity with the requirements of St. Petersburg University on the awarding of relevant degrees, academic degrees, and the author is entitled to being awarded a candidate of sciences degree in political science. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alexander Nikolaevich. The next review is from Doctor of Political Science, Associate Professor Anna Vladimirovna Volkova. Thank you very much. I would like to say, over the 15 years, the administrative reforms and other transformations have been either on the top of the agenda, the news agenda, or have been subdued by foreign policy events. But now the administration reforms issues are widely discussed and debated in the public domain, and I would like to support this work as a very relevant work. And Anna Mikhailovna has managed to analyze a huge array of empirical data and the literature in administrative reform, and make some reviews and surveys and conclusions, and come up with independent research. The work has theoretical significance. It has its own face, and I would like to disagree with my colleague. The number of objectives reflect the number of paragraphs in the work, and therefore I think that I like the number of objectives that have been set. Anna Mikhailovna formulated the provisions that are very relevant and address our understanding of public politics in Russia. A good empirical base, official websites, regional e-government sites, and the resources on budgeting are of an asset for this work. Chapter 3 has to do with innovation and the e-state, e-government. We see in it an analysis of negative and positive sides. She writes technological changes can allow for the transformation. For example, the electronic document management systems and other tools that create the area of trust. But on the other hand, they don't diminish the need to resolve issues in the social, political, and social security sphere. The man is in the center of digitalization, and unfortunately digitalization can remove all the issues. The dissertation has drawbacks, of course, and it's natural for any research work. I would like to point out some wordiness of the provisions. I think that you gave me the understanding of the reasons. You along the way changed your understanding of the subject matter, but I wouldn't like to see the changes in the final text, and I would like to see this work to have some sociological polling data, screenshots, and other sources. Graphs could be put in an appendix that would make the conclusions more valid. But on the whole, the dissertation is in conformity with the due requirements, and the number of publications, they're very high-level publications, exceeds the minimal number, which is another plus. So I support the dissertation. And then the floor is given to Professor Nikolai Baranov, this from Northwest Institute of Public Administration. I would like to congratulate Anna Mikhailovna on the completion of her very long work, which was started in the early 2000s, and now over the 20 years the material has been processed, and the number of grants that have been received and completed by the defendant is also quite large. I would like to draw your attention to the original approach that is characterized by the institutional, conceptual, and political changes, and the comprehensive approach, and then technologies also included, and that describes the paradigm of the interaction between the state and citizens. And as a positive result, I would like to draw your attention to the clear connection between the political system and the administrative reform. And she talks about transparency and flexibility of this interaction, and the conclusions are quite valid. The technological changes in the information sphere can lay the foundations for changes of the mechanisms that are described in the work. And elements of the political transformations in Russia are of interest as well, and the description of the participation of the civil society and the participation of citizens in the government, this is all very good. I enjoyed reading the work. The work is quite profound, but I read very attentively the text, and therefore I would focus on some drawbacks that I found. The goal, well, the goal is not to prove the impact of the conceptual factors, etc. We're not mathematicians. Maybe we identify some tendencies, some facts, the conceptual factors, the constitutional factors in this regard. President Putin, well, President has, well, the President Putin has launched a policy of strengthening democracy and solidifying the chain of command. So these are contradictory tendencies. How Vladimir Vladimirovich managed to combine these contradictions of grassroots, bottom to upwards movement, democratic movement, and that top to the bottom, the centralization movement, how these contradictory movements have been reconciled, I don't see. And on page 130, for the realization of the implementation budget for the population the following minister led the work, but at that moment the minister was a different person. I will not mention his name, but so there's inaccuracy. And then there's the concept of digital economy, and there's some documents, that are crucial documents that are missing in the work. For example, national programs on the information society. Although my criticism doesn't diminish the value of the work, I appreciate the work very highly, and therefore Anna Mikhailovna deserves to be awarded the third degree in political science. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nikolai Alexeyevich. I would like to give the floor now to Professor Pashkus, Professor of Economic Policy, please. I'm the fourth to speak. I will just confine myself. I will check out the justification why this research work is relevant. It's very relevant. I will just confine myself to the criticism, and the work is actually gaining in relevance over the years. In the financial crunch. When we actually reviewed a paper that had been written before the financial crunch, and in it that financial crash had been predicted. And so this can be said about this work as well, because it has a large forecasting potential. And the work has some drawbacks, of course, and the following are worth mentioning. The flowery, eloquent style. Then some provisions are formulated in a very different way, and the substance looks the same, but as we read on, the same concept is more elucidated and elucidated, and new angles are added and stuff like that. But within the same work, it can't be done. The author focuses on political science, literature, but on budgeting, but avoids reviewing the economic literature on the matter, and this is the second drawback, and the third drawback has to do with the fact that the author uses a descriptive approach to. There's some analysis, but not enough. Maybe economic, econometric methods and models are studied, then the work would really win, and the provisions would look more valid. And the fourth drawback includes typos, and Minister Lavrov instead of Minister Siluanov, and bibliographic citations are a little bit carelessly presented, but on the whole, this dissertation is a rounded research, and it's complete, and therefore it conforms to the requirements of St. Petersburg University on awarding academic degrees, and candidate Ignatova Anna Mikhailovna deserves the sought degree to be awarded to her. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vadim Yurovich. Ivan Vadimovich Radik, Doctor of Political Science, St. Petersburg University. Dear Chairman, dear members of the Dissertation Council, I will start with stating that Anna Mikhailovna's attempt at formulating drawing a picture of the administrative reform in Russia is very commendable. And another statement that the structure of the work conforms to the goal, and the provisions are based on the analysis of the problems, the current problems of administrative reforms in Russia. And this is a fact, and it's obvious. Out of the provisions that put for defense actually reflects the novelty and the originality of the research. So the comprehensive approach to the institutional, conceptual, and political factors, and the technological factors, the impact of them on the reform, on the administrative reforms, this is all very relevant. And this is an achievement of the author, but I would like to focus now on some controversial issues. I was bewildered by some things. I don't think that it's acceptable that the formulations of the key provisions should not be changed throughout the work and in the presentation, because the changes actually concern conceptual issues, because you add some fantastic things at the end that have no grounding in the body of the work. As a result, for some citing, as a result, the conceptual that the reforms are under the impacts by the actions of the core of the political authorities. What is the core of the political authorities in Russia, and how do they change the political institutions? So it's a very careless approach. On pages 146 and 12, the lack of accuracy of formulating the second provision for the defense. Yeah. The contradictions have been revealed that are parts of the concept of the administrative reform. Well, of course, the source, of course, contradictions are the source, but these contradictions are not described or analyzed in the conclusion is correct, but they're not elaborated on. The author is very inaccurate, and unfortunately, this diminishes the practical significance of the work. If these contradictions had been revealed in the paper, then the sought degree would have had to be awarded immediately, only for that. And the Belarusian colleague said it about the risk of negative impact of e-government and the openness, e-openness. The author says that false or even fake information can spread among the population. But who provokes the spread of this information? The state or individuals? Of course, the scope of the dissertation is limited, but this is an important issue, and it should have been addressed. And then another thing, among the provisions to be put down for defense about the service state, I couldn't find what transformation of the administrative system, structural transformation. What structural transformation taking place? Well, unfortunately, I tried to find what the author could have meant, but unfortunately, the author herself doesn't do that. Well, these transformations are not detailed or explained in detail, so this is a drawback. But the service state, on page 86, there's no characterization of the impact of administrative reform on the creation of this or the formation of the service state is lacking. Well, there's some fortunately mishaps in writing. Some statements from the leaders of our country created by political President Putin created a stable political system due to the high oil and gas revenues. Well, I would disagree with it. That these are the reasons. Well, the political authorities include the president, some decision makers, and the oligarchs. Well, not oligarchs, but top captains of the industry. Well, I would say that the political decision maker circle is too narrow here. How can is and then the style again, very obscure formulations. But summing up my review, the relevance of the work is indisputable. Well, maybe I was very emotional, drawing your attention to the drawbacks, to grammatical inaccuracies. Well, they don't change my positive attitude to the work. And the formal conclusion is the dissertation presented for this defense conforms to the requirements of the Act of St. Petersburg University on awarding academic degrees, and Anna Mikhailovna Ignatova deserves the sought degree to be awarded to her. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, we have a review from the member of the Dissertation Council of Moscow University. I will just read out some key points. The author of the review states that the topic is very relevant but very complicated, and this is not only a relevant work, but it's a multifaceted topic. But the author succeeded in presenting a logically rounded thesis. Presents a systemic, comprehensive analysis of political governments in Russia, and that led to the creation of the current service-oriented version of public administration. And the empirical material is quite vast, and the statements of political leaders are interpreted in a valid way, and the approach is original. The author of the review draws your attention to the fact that the author of the dissertation correctly states that a lot of the public administration functioning is beyond the control of government, and the author also states that the key factor, he agrees with the conclusion of the author of the dissertation that the success of administrative reform depends on the willingness of government bodies to actually take reform decisions, and also he says that he agrees with the fact that the author is right about the need to involve citizens in public governance. Also, the review points out some a lack of argumentation in the research. Why is the notion, the ruling political regime, not used? Because the actions and discrepancies, it's not the political system, but the ruling political regime that's at play. And the interplay of interests governs the actions of the ruling political regime. You have to clarify also network, the influence of network agents, and because networks connect the state and citizens or society, but these network agents form coalitions, and the networks of citizens. It's not the networks of citizens that bring a prevalent impact on the public administration system, but the networks of the ruling elite agents that compete in terms of wealth and political influence. These networks actually play a predominant role on changing the political public administration system. The leading, it's not the planning or design of the policy, but the implementation that is not the design, but the implementation of the policy that ultimately impacts the administrative reforms. And in Western democracies, half of the funding that is dedicated to public reform actually is spent on educating civil servants and changing their mentality, whereas in Russia it's more about enhancing technology and digitalization. So the conclusion on the whole of the review author is that the dissertation conforms to the requirements of St. Petersburg University on awarding the academic degrees, and Anna Mikhailovna deserves to be awarded the third degree in political science. And I would like to now say a few words about what I say in my review. In my review, I have all the necessary elements, the assessment of relevance, the objectives, the compatibility of the body of argumentation, and the conclusions. I think the dissertation is a valid work. Anna Mikhailovna is a growing political scientist, and she was part of the grant team as member of but she also participated in other grants as an outside member, and Anna Mikhailovna represents a school for thought of St. Petersburg University on the study of public administration and the changes between public administration and politics. The three key points are commendable, that are important to the theory of political science and for the assessment of the 20 years of administration reform. The dissertation so the author says that the principle of putting public reform, administration reform, under the dependence of the goals of bringing stability to the political system halts the development of public administration reform. The dynamics of the accountability parameters, the dynamics are specified, and I would like to say that the literature has a lot of works about administrative reform, but there's no literature of political scientists that would give a comprehensive viewpoint of political reform and the constraints regarding the constraints and the potential of such reform. Well, because there are some obviously institutional constraints and opportunities, and external and internal factors. So, well, the third point, it is proven that modern Russia, the service state dominates public administration transformation. Anna Mikhailovna points out because all administrative transmutations are geared towards providing public services. Of course, the service state is the core of the core reason for all transformations, but it's too narrow. And do we see the narrowness of this approach? And there's a need of big data analysis, and the author outlines the contradictory character of digitalization. Because it lacks the training of civil servants and the citizen in the ways of how to live in the digital environment. So there's an inherent contradiction in the administrative reform. So what is the most important in the thesis? There's a politological model of ideational prerequisites and structural reasons of a public administration reform, and that lead to a number of dysfunctional aspects in the reform. And I have some controversial comments on controversial points in the dissertation. When analyzing the 1990s administrative reform, the author doesn't formulate answers why these attempts were not successful. Is it because of the conflicts within the elite, or low integration of conceptual and structural factors, which is close to the concept of the author? This was a period of transit from one system to a different system. Maybe the author should have used some studies of transitology in the area of transitology. Some assessments some assessments of the reforms and the success of such reforms point to the conclusions that voluntary actions of the leadership brought about the described results. And this is a oversimplified approach because not all the factors have been taken into account by the author. And there's and then there's also another term that's very controversial, controlled pluralism. It's either pluralism or controlled. And the justification of this term, of the validity of this term, is not provided. And the legal documents that are provided in the work are of an illustrative nature, whereas they could serve an explanatory and analytical role. But on the whole, the dissertation is valid, and the candidate deserves to be awarded the third degree. We finished hearing the dissertation members, dissertation council members, and now thank you very much for all the comments. I agree with most of them. After I published my text, I saw these drawbacks. Well, I not read my research, but I just saw them when I looked at it as an observer. As far as the role of the address of the President of the Federation to the Federal Assembly of January 1520, requests for changes are related to the essence of administrative and political reform, which is an important factor in general socio-economic changes. In this regard, the constitutional changes being undertaken today partly answer the question of the need to coordinate political and administrative transformations. The dissertation in Chapter 1, Paragraph 2 shows the need for such consistency. Regarding the remark on the unjustifiability of expanded number of tasks set in the work. The answer: I agree with that it is necessary to specify the goals and objectives of the study, although their wording, of course, reveals various aspects of the central issue of the dissertation research problem. This is the ratio of the ideological, structural, and institutional conditions of administrative reform. Regarding comments of the lack of use of mathematical and economic mathematical methods and models in the dissertation, well, the author of the study doesn't ignore the economic issues at work. However, the use of statistical and econometric methods and models would lead the presentation logic away from the main topic. Therefore, the author is forced to comply with the requirements to be within the specialty 2302, political institutions, processes, and technologies. Therefore, I chose not to include those economic methods in the dissertation. Concerning the comment regarding network coalitions that influence the course of reform, it is necessary to take into account the peculiarities of how horizontal networks of interaction between political elites, economic elites, and bureaucracy influence the course of the reform. In analyzing the real course of the reforms, attention is drawn to network conditions, the ruling class networks that deform horizontal interactions. That's page 65 and 69 in the Russian version of the research, the thesis. Regarding the remark that there are no conclusions regarding the execution of the decree of the President of the Russian Federation of May 7th, 2012, number 605, that all regions and municipalities should switch to interagency cooperations by 2018. Regarding the execution of and non-enforcement of the decree, the following can be said. Non-fulfillment of the decree of the President of the Russian Federation fits into the logic of the transformation process, structural inconsistencies as well as the contradictions and the instances in actions. In addition, the head of the ministry on February 5th, 2020, the Minister of Digital Development, Telecommunications and Mass Media of the Russian Federation, Shadayev, said that since the development of digital services has been inertial driven over the past 2 years, 70% of all government services should be fully provided electronically without the need for an in-person visit to government agencies and the multifunctional service center. Regarding comments on certain trends of transformations and stable traditions of the Russian government reform, I would like to note that the subject of this discussion, such as merged transformation, even take into account a number of historical parallels, provincial reform of Peter I and cutting federal districts in 2000, and the appearance of the State Council as it was considered by Speransky in 1809 did not appear as it possible to devote separate parts of the work in this. In our opinion, the facts of the entire modern political and administrative elite received their education and experience in managerial activity in the Soviet period, and to a large extent mainstream maintains continuity with this era. Putin, Matvienko, and Mironov proves the fact. Regarding comments on some value judgments that are not sufficiently substantiated, while acknowledging the validity of the categorical nature of some value judgments, however, I would like to note that in specific cases, the judgments were made on the basis of analysis of analytical materials, for example, page 72, authors of different years, Rushanov and so on. A report on best practices of development in the constituent entities of the Russian Federation. Now, would like to turn to members of the public. If anyone willing to speak up, anyone willing to speak up? Not members of the Dissertation Council. Although members of the Dissertation Council are entitled to take part in the floor discussion. No takers, therefore there's no need then to give the floor to the defendant therefore I would like to turn to the next item, the review of the dissertation advisor. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, for your attention. I thank you for this profound and strong critique, and that give impetus to new avenues of research. Of course, we need to develop the anthropology of politics. We don't do that. Only historians do that. Of course, we must address the interests of political groups and actors that are then incorporated in the changes. The political economy issues should be incorporated. We have to join forces here. In as far as the dissertation author in 2000. Anna Mikhailovna graduated with a degree of specialist, 5-year degree, first degree, and then she stayed working at the department as a researcher, and she did some technical work with grants and also working with grants resulted in this, and to work for 10 years on the text and not to have lapses in the text, because one person started the work on the text and a completely different person completed the text, and of course this of course led to the discrepancies in the work, but I think that we have a new academic, and as good researcher, I would like to commend you on your inquisitiveness, and I would like Anna Mikhailovna to follow in your footsteps. Thank you very much. I would like to give the concluding opportunity for the defendant, the candidate. I would like to thank my research advisor, Tatiana, the greatest. Thank you for the patience and for the support over the years. I tried to write something. You will have a different opportunity. So maybe this opportunity for the. Thank you for the time that you spent on reviewing my work. Thank you. We have a new stage to go into. Please, members of the Dissertation Council, please take a break, coffee break, and we will discuss. to the resolution of awarding the degree. Dear colleagues, dear members of the Dissertation Council, we've switched on the broadcast again. Everything is working. Everybody is able to hear me. And we're going now to take the decision on awarding the degree of in political science, of academic sciences, and we're going to vote openly, one by one. I just want to remind that the resolution is supported if more than half of the membership, not fewer than 3 members of the Dissertation Council vote for it. This is the requirement of St. Petersburg University. Well, I'm asking now members of the Dissertation Council to vote. Anna Vladimir Volkova. Dear colleagues, yes. Vladimir, yes. Ivan Vladimirovich, yes. Yes. Nikolai Baranovich, for it. Alexander, for it. And as chairman, I also support this decision and vote for it. Dear guests, dear members of the Dissertation Council, out of the members of the Dissertation present in this room, all members of the Dissertation voted for the awarding of the degree of candidate of political science in the specialty 2300.202. The decision is taken, and the third degree for the dissertation Political and Conceptual Foundations of the Transformation of Public Administration in Modern Russia is taken. No abstentions, no. We congratulate on behalf of the Dissertation Council and myself, and I would like to give the floor to Anna Mikhailovna. Thank you very much. Extend my gratitude to all members of the Dissertation Council for your time, for very detailed scrutiny of my dissertation. I will take into consideration what you said in my future work. Thank you for awarding me the degree. Thank you. Dear audience members, I'd like to thank the members of the Dissertation Council, who everybody on Skype or here in person. The session is now officially closed. Thank you very much.